Go ahead, my friend. Kelly.
Hello. I didn't know if you wanted to say hi first, Ray. Hi, everybody. Welcome to our next career jumpstart. My name is 𝗕𝗿𝗵𝗱, and I am here with my esteemed colleague, Ray Jackson. How are you today, Ray?
Doing pretty good, my friend. I think since the last time we actually saw each other as it relates to one of these live streams, I've actually gotten older during that time. I actually grew a whole year older since the last live stream.
How time flies. And you're still older than me.
Yeah. Unfortunately, yes, I'm still older than you.
It's okay. It's okay.
But I'm doing good.
Well, happy belated birthday.
Thank you, my friend.
Yay, happy belated birthday, Ray. I kind of kicked off our session today with a little bit of a humble brag there. But oh, it's so much harder being younger than you.
That's good.
Yeah, so today our topic is about getting ahead in our careers with humility. And humility is one of those topics that I think people kind of know when they see it, but they especially know when they don't see it.
Okay.
And so what we're going to be talking about today and what we're going to kind of jump off with is a little bit of a discussion about what humility actually is. I was sharing with Ray some examples of what humble bragging is. So some of you listening and watching tonight may not be overly familiar with that term if you don't spend a ton of time on social media. But a humble brag is essentially a way of bragging on yourself while pretending to be humble. So saying things like, oh, I'm so grateful that I have this $3 million that I was able to give to charity. Or it's just so hard to find shirts that fit me now that I've lost so much weight, those kind of things, right? So the way that we are planning to talk about this tonight, though, is in a positive way of thinking about sort of bragging on yourself, but by using humility to promote yourself in a really positive way. So we're going to be talking about sort of that uncomfortable feeling that comes with the idea of what we a lot of times think of as having to brag on ourselves to get recognition, but being able to do it in a humble way. So Ray, what are your thoughts on what self-promotion actually is?
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, the way I look at self-promotion, it's really using the words, promoting yourself. It's selling yourself. It's marketing yourself. I mean, there's so many different angles as far as terms that we can use. But basically, it's taking ownership of your brand, whatever that might be, and then persuading others and influencing others. Let me correct it. Influencing others with your brand in the manner in which you want to influence them. So like, for instance, if we're talking about, you know, maybe you have an interest in someone and you want to meet them, or maybe you like them, you're attracted to them or what have you. So, you know, you try to promote yourself to that person. So you might start dressing nicely. You might take a shower, get cleaned up, get a fresh haircut or what have you. And, you know, you might start dressing a little bit differently. You might even strike up a conversation with this individual and so on and so forth. So these are probably things that you may not have typically had done over the last several months, weeks, years, or what have you. But then you found someone that interested you and you're like, you know what? I really want to get to know this person and maybe we could end up being together later on. So in order for that person to even know that you exist, you're going to have to put yourself out there. You're going to have to introduce yourself, meet them, and strike up a conversation or what have you. So everything that I just described, even though it's not in the context of a career, but it's really the same thing within our own space, within our careers. You know, if we want to get noticed by our leader's leader, or maybe the senior leaders, some of the executives or department heads, kind of have to do the same thing. Obviously, you still should be taking a shower, but the thing is that you want to get on their radar, because when you start thinking about career advancement, moving up within an organization, or, or moving around within an organization, people need to know who you are in order for them to even know that you exist. If they don't know that you exist, guess what? You should not expect any type of promotion, no matter how well you are performing. People just flat out don't know who you are. And so at a bare minimum, it's just making people aware of who you are. And I like to take it a step further, especially in the context of a career, letting them know who you are. And then also giving them the opportunity to understand the value that you provide to the organization or to the team or what have you. And so those are just some of the elements that are involved. That's just my take on what self-promotion is. I don't know, Kelly, if you had any other ideas along those lines that you would like to share, but in a nutshell, that's the way I look at it.
Yeah, I like that idea of thinking about it in the same way as a dating relationship, where there is some level of like, I gotta go ahead and like put myself out there a little bit as a possibility. I think one of the things that when I was thinking about this topic that popped up for me is the idea of promotion.
Okay,
and
I like that.
Promotion means moving ahead, actively, deliberately making momentum and movement forward, in the same way that, we think about being proactive. And I know for me and my work experience in the past, before I really understood this concept of promoting myself out there and advocating for myself out in the workplace, I tended to be reactive. And so, I would see somebody else get an opportunity that I didn't get. And I would say things like, I cannot believe that they didn't notice all of this work that I've done. I can't believe that somebody else got this opportunity and I didn't, and it's not fair. And didn't they know that I know how to do this stuff too?
Yeah.
So in a sense, self-promotion is basically letting people know in advance of an opportunity that you are capable of doing the thing. So that you're not coming after the fact and being frustrated about it because you didn't get the chance and the opportunity is now gone and you're now stuck waiting for another opportunity. So, it's that proactive motion for yourself forward, thinking forward that I think sometimes, I don't know, and I know we're going to talk about this a little bit too, but this feels really icky for a lot of people. And they don't want to feel stuck up about it. They don't want to feel arrogant about it. But honestly, when you think about it, if you're expecting people to notice what you're doing without having to tell them that you're doing things, you're basically sort of expecting to be the center of attention anyway.
Interesting.
It's like, I shouldn't have to tell people this. I shouldn't have to say this, but I don't want to actually tell them. But they should notice these things about me. They should have been paying attention to this. And it's like, why are you suddenly in the center of everybody's universe? We think of self-promotion as sometimes feeling arrogant, but it's sort of like this overdeveloped sense of arrogance when we don't want to promote ourselves. We expect everybody to know what we're doing.
Yeah, and I want to make a point with that. So really quickly, I see that our good friend Valerie Tran has joined us.
Hey!
So thank you so much, Valerie, for tuning in. And it looks like you may have tagged someone else, so hopefully they can join as well. And so really quickly, Kelly, so along the same lines that you were just mentioning. So here's the thing. And I used to say this in training when we used to do it live back in the day quite often. So when you think about yourself, and I want you to, hopefully you answer correctly, Kelly, we'll see. So when you think about yourself, who's the most important person to you? To you. If you think about you in your life, who is the most important person to you, Kelly?
Well, this is going to sound arrogant, I guess, but I have to be the most important person in my own life.
Okay, so I'm glad you said that. So you think about it. Okay, so the point is that all of us no matter how humble that we might think we are, at the end of the day, most of the time, for many of us, we are the most important person to ourselves. Okay, so understanding that when you start engaging with other people, you have to also recognize they're looking out for their own interests, probably first and foremost. I don't care how great of a person, how nice and how kind they are still probably still thinking about themselves to some degree, more so than other people. So the only way that we can disrupt that or interrupt that, we got to say, hey, look at me over here. This is what I'm doing. This is how I can help you. This is how I can make your life better, or whatever it might be. And so that's the, I guess that's what we're up against. So there's so many things, and I know we've mentioned this in the past. There's so many things that compete for our attention from day to day. And we have to compete with all of that. Mm-hmm. We have to compete with all of that. And so to your point, it's almost like reverse selfishness. Yeah. When you say, well, I can't believe they didn't notice how well I did on that project, or why didn't my leader, consider me when they were, looking at all the different opportunities that are coming up, ahead of us. And that kind of reminds me, Kelly, and I think I've shared this story with you. And shout out to Misty Green. Thank you for joining us, my friend. We got a couple of people logging in or joining us from LinkedIn. That's awesome.
We love people.
Kudos to our colleagues that are tuning in on LinkedIn. But so going back to the point of competing with other people's attentions, I guess, focus and everything else. So my very first job, professional job out of college, I worked at a nonprofit agency, and I was a case manager. Okay. And so this was a very small nonprofit agency. We had about 10 people, and I was hired on to be a case manager, but fresh out of college, I'm ready. I'm eager. I'm anxious. I want to just do everything. I want to take over the world, And so I was really good friends with the person. I think we called her title was, I can't think of it offhand, but basically she was in charge of fundraising. Okay. And so I just had an interest, like I said, fresh out of college. I just want to learn as much as I could at that time. And so we were really good friends. Actually, I think she was the one that enabled me to get that job, because I knew her prior to coming to that particular place. And so she was going out of town, I think on vacation. And so, like I said, I asked her, hey, could I help you at all? I just want to learn more. And she's like, she was overloaded anyway. She was a department of one. And so obviously she's not going to turn away free help. And so she showed me a couple of things. She provided some resources to me. I went to back then, this was like the infancy stages of the internet. So, it really wasn't a thing back then. And so I physically had to go to the library. So I went to the library. I did research as far as foundations that fund nonprofit agencies. So I did all this research. I drafted a proposal for a grant. So a grant proposal, submitted it. It was fully funded. Okay. It was fully funded. And the whole point of the grant was for us to be able to hire another case manager. Like I said, very small organization. And so fully funded, hired another person. And then when it came down to the executive director reporting the good news about us being funded to the board of directors. And the thing was that we all attended that board meeting. And, that was my very first time ever being in a board meeting in my entire life. And so I'm sitting there, I'm all, in the corner, I'm introverted anyway. So I was really introverted that day, didn't say anything. So when it came to acknowledge who was responsible for writing the grant and submitting it, the executive director said it was my friend who was in charge of that department, gave her credit. My friend knew who wrote that grant proposal. She didn't acknowledge it. She didn't correct the lady or anything like that. And that did not sit well with me at all. So I was like that person, like, I can't believe this just happened. I can't believe she just did that, and the executive director, she should have known, because the lady was on vacation when the thing was submitted. She
Right.
actually signed for it. The executive director signed for it, and I, passed that on to her to sign for it. So it's just like, why in the world would you pass credit on to someone else that had nothing to do except just providing me with some resources? But I actually had to put the whole thing together. And Kelly, that burned me up.
I can imagine.
That was my very first job. And so it took me a very, very long time. I'm not going to even tell you how long it took me, but it took me a very long time to get over that. And the thing is that, like I said, I was extremely introverted, and I just didn't promote myself in that situation. And it wasn't a good feeling. The place ended up going out of business. But anyway, the whole point is that there are missed opportunities all of the time. And it's really incumbent upon us as individuals to to take the lead in promoting ourselves, no matter how uncomfortable it might be. Yeah. Just like I was in that situation, I was extremely uncomfortable, but I guarantee you, after seeing what happened, I was more angry and upset than being uncomfortable in that moment. And so I get mad at myself. I'm like, why didn't I speak up? Or even if I didn't speak up during the board meeting, I should have spoken up afterwards and let that leader, the executive director, know, hey, so-and-so didn't have anything to do with this. I'm the one that wrote that. And not to be a jerk, not to be arrogant, but it's just like, if we don't take the lead in growing our career, then somebody else is going to take that from us. And Valerie Tran just popped up with a comment. She says, that's happened to me as well. Wow. After a time or two, you stop letting others take credit for your work. That is so true, Valerie.
Yeah. And sometimes, unfortunately, it comes out with anger when you do feel that, like, you feel taken advantage of. You feel overlooked, and either you get mad about it and you sort of lash out about it, or you find a way to actually promote yourself successfully. Or you let that cycle just keep happening over and over and over again. And it becomes this sort of self-fulfilling prophecy where you're like, I never get opportunities. And nobody ever gives me opportunities. So maybe I'm not actually deserving of opportunities.
Wow.
And that cycle, it's just like a downward spiral at that point of self-fulfilling prophecy of like, I'm never going to get opportunities because I don't talk about the fact that I want opportunities or that I can do these things. So nobody gives me the chance. So maybe they're right after all. And you end up, years and years and years later in a job where you just feel really unfulfilled, really frustrated and taken advantage of, which is not a good place to be.
You get stuck, So really quickly, since we're talking about giving credit, so I want to give a shout out to my son, Ray J Jackson. He's actually producing this episode of Career Jumpstart. He's manning the ship, basically. He's behind the scenes, making sure that your comments pop up when you make those comments. And also he's ensuring that everything is going well. So thank you, son, so much for stepping up and doing this, which is awesome because now it frees me up so I can be fully engaged in our conversation, my friend. So kudos to Ray. We will give you props, son. We're not going to overlook you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So Ray, was there anything else you wanted to bring up in the reveal section, talking about what self-promotion is and what it isn't before we move on to reflect?
Yeah. And I think we've kind of touched on this already to a degree, but we can talk about it a little bit further. So when you start thinking about self-promotion, Kelly, how can it benefit us? How does it benefit us?
Wow.
And I can be like grossly uncomfortable with promoting myself, but what are the rewards, I guess, is what I'm really asking.
Well, I think, for some people that really want to, obviously move forward, you have to get noticed somehow. And you were talking about this just a few minutes ago. If you aren't the person who is pointing out what you've accomplished, unless you have a really nice leader or a really thoughtful coworker that's going to do that for you, you are going to continue to be passed over. And it's not just promotions, it's new opportunities, it's even just networking with people and getting chances to go to an event or go to a meeting or get invited to go talk to somebody that maybe you've never met before.
Sure.
If you aren't pushing yourself to that front of mind place for others to help you, you're never going to get any help. You know, and to me, I think that's one of the things that has always felt really kind of icky to me. I think, huh?
And you're an extrovert.
I am an extreme extrovert. I am extremely extroverted, but like a lot of us, I was raised to believe that talking about myself in front of other people was a sign of being, here's a good Southern phrase, too big for my britches.
Okay.
So britches, for any of you who are not Southern, it means you're basically too big for your pants. You're like trying to build yourself up to be something that you're not.
Absolutely.
And you know, and that you're supposed to be meek, you're supposed to be humble, you're supposed to be quiet, and you know, and this can fall back into like religious traditions that teach this kind of behavior, like you know, your right hand does things but your left hand doesn't know about them. Like you're supposed not to brag on yourself, you're supposed to do things behind the scenes quietly, to not seek approval for what you're doing. And I think that's where this balance of humility comes into this, because we're not bragging about things to build ourselves up just for our own ego's sake. And I think that's the big dividing line for this, is that we're talking about the things that we do and the things that we're capable of doing to help ourselves in our careers, but to also help others, and to, you know, to look at this from sort of that service perspective of, if we can help other people, we can only do that if people know that we can help. So, you know, there comes a point where you have to be willing to go out there and say, you know, I'm actually pretty good at doing this, so I can help other people if they need help doing this. I know for me, that sort of helped to pull apart some of that icky feeling that came with it. It's like I can help more people if I let people know that I can help. But otherwise I'm just going to sit there and just feel frustrated that I can't help anybody.
Absolutely. I mean, that makes complete sense. And I think for me, the hardest thing for me has been, you know, dealing with self-doubt. And even though, you know, I know the things I know, and I'm comfortable with the things that I know, doesn't mean I know everything, and I'm completely well aware of that. But it doesn't mean that I don't know anything, or that I'm not capable of doing things. And it's always like, you know, I'm always thinking that, well, there's somebody out there that's better than me, or that's stronger, that's more educated, that's more talented than I am, and so forth. So it's like you start having like this imposter syndrome thing going on. And it's like, why can't I just speak up for myself? And I'm the baby of the family, growing up in a family full of, I guess you could say, dominant people to a degree. My dad seemed to be dominant. My mom was very sociable, very extroverted. My sister is also dominant. And I'm the baby of the family. So everybody took care of, you know, they used to call me Ray Ray when I was a kid. So everybody took care of little Ray Ray as he was growing up. And I was extremely shy. So, and I think I've shared this publicly before, how I didn't start talking in public until I was like 8 years old. And so prior to that, folks used to just speak up for me. And so you get used to that. And then you get to a new situation where people don't know who you are. And so it's like, okay, do I remain invisible, or do I, you know, take that risk and put myself out there and, you know, getting a chance to meet people and learn from them and grow and things of that nature. So you kind of get to the point where it's just like, or at least for me, you get tired of it. You get tired of just being like a wallflower, and you seeing everybody else progressing and making, you know, passing you by. And it's just like, you know I'm better than them as far as getting this work done, or, you know, meeting these expectations or deliverables. And it's like, why are they getting all the opportunities? And that's when you have to really look at yourself and say, okay, so what is it that I'm not doing that's causing me to stay pretty much stagnant in this space as opposed to moving forward? And that's a tough conversation to have with yourself, because now you have to admit, yeah, I'm not perfect. There are some things that I need to work on that will enable me to better myself. Yeah. And it's kind of crazy because once you start doing that, it doesn't necessarily mean that's always going to be comfortable, but then you start seeing that track record or that progress being made, and then you start to build a little bit more confidence. And it's like, okay, so this is not as scary as I thought it was going to be. As a matter of fact, there are other people out here that are wanting to help me. But yes. Here's the thing. Yeah. So that just reminded me, I just had an epiphany. So I had a thought. So it's like the person that you see on the side of the highway, mm-hmm. that maybe their car stalled out. It just stopped. Okay. So if you're driving down the highway and you see somebody's car stopped on the side of the road and you see them in the car, but nothing is going on, they're just stopped in the car and they're sitting in the driver's seat, would you be inclined to stop in that particular example?
No.
No, absolutely not. But now what if you saw that person stopped on the side of the road, the hood is lifted up, and they're actually standing outside with their hand on their hip, looking at the engine, and it's smoking? Would you be inclined to stop just to inquire, if they need any help or anything like that? Or would you call somebody on their behalf, maybe?
I would at least call somebody. I watch way too many forensic files and serial killer shows to stop on the side of the road for anybody, but I know exactly what you mean. And I would be much more likely to help somebody that's actually trying to help themselves.
Yep.
Versus somebody that's like, I don't know, I'm just going to sit here and wait.
And the same thing happens within our jobs, within our careers. People are not going to know what you're wanting to do unless you exhibit those things, unless you broadcast whatever it is that you desire. But if you just kind of keep it to yourself and you don't really tell anyone, no one's going to know. And, like you said at the beginning of the show, I think you said something like, you're over here angry and upset, saying to yourself, I can't believe so-and-so didn't notice me, or that they're not acknowledging that I did this. Well, it's because they didn't know. You have like this whole thing going on, but only you know about it. Yeah. And the thing is that as we begin to kind of open up and share that, or at least not even, overtly share it, but at least if we start exposing other people to what we're doing and what we're trying to accomplish, I'm telling you, it opens up so many doors. And I'll talk about that later on. But it's amazing what happens, once we open ourselves up.
Well, and Ray, I think you brought up something that is such an important point that I want to make sure that it's interesting, because we always do this, right? Like you had the thought and I literally had the same thought at the same time.
There you go.
That by telling others that we are interested in doing something, or that we have done something, or that we want to do something, we want to fix the car, or whatever the case may be, we're actually giving somebody else the opportunity to help us.
Yep.
People love to help other people. And this is something that, that I have recently rediscovered for myself, that, as I've been working on developing my own business stuff, there is a lady whose work I really admire. I have multiples of her books that I've gotten over the years, and she hosts a training consulting call every week. And I signed up for her mailing list, and I got onto these calls, and I was me, extrovert me, was sitting on these calls like creepy lurker in the background. Like, I'm not going to say anything. I'm just going to sit here and quietly observe, because I don't want to bother this lady. I want to learn from her, but I don't want to bother her. So I'm just not going to say anything. Wow. And then finally one day, I was commenting. I finally got up the guts to comment in the chat. And she asked me to unmute myself and say something over, on the call. And I was like, I don't know if I'm like deserving enough to do this, but I went ahead and did it. So we have started a conversation back and forth, and this lady is amazing. Like, she sent me Her name is Elaine Beach.
Okay. Oh, this
She
is the
sent
lady
me
with the
a bunch of
books.
books. She
Gotcha.
sent me books. She's she's willing to offer me advice. She's willing to offer help. And I sent her some hand knit dish towels for Christmas, and so thank you
That's
gift for
pretty
her for
cool.
sending me this stuff. But it was amazing to me, and it continues to be amazing to me how much people want to help other people.
Yeah.
There are lots of leaders in every organization who want to mentor. They want to help people. They want to see other people be successful, but they can't help you if they don't know.
That is so true.
You
Wow.
have to reach out to them. So if as we move into this discussion around what can we do to help promote ourselves, this is one thing that I want to just plant that seed in people's minds is you're not only giving yourself an opportunity to help other people through the work that you do, but you're also giving other people the opportunity to feel good by helping someone else, being you.
That is so true.
That is a gift that you are giving to somebody else, because it's going to make them feel great about themselves and they're going to enjoy that process, but they can't help you if they don't know that you are interested in, getting something, finding out something from them, learning from them in some way.
So true. Yeah. I mean, it gives them the opportunity to create value for you. And guess what? Once they do that, they can go along and do the same thing, replicate that with somebody else. So if you're joining us, or if you're tuning in right now, go ahead and drop it in the chat. What is something about self-promotion that you may not feel comfortable with? So for example, I mentioned how, I'm an introvert. And so, I struggle with self-doubt as far as putting myself out there. So what are some areas as it relates to self-promotion that you don't necessarily feel comfortable with doing? And to my surprise, I didn't know Kelly didn't necessarily feel comfortable with that. That was news to me. So, all of us have our struggles to a degree with self-promotion. So if you feel comfortable in sharing, those that are tuned in, if you can drop a comment in the chat and letting us know, what is it about self-promotion that you might struggle with or have an issue with? So we would love to hear from you. Okay. What else, Kelly?
Well, one of the things that keeps people from feeling comfortable with self-promotion, and I don't think we've talked about this so much yet, is that we see other people do it and they're jerks.
Yeah.
And the people that are like glad handing and like, the whole like shaking hands, kissing babies kind of thing that just seems super fake or forced or awkward. And I think for a lot of us, that's what we have in mind is what self-promotion is. And I think this is why this is such a good conversation. And as we move into the recharge section, that we're hopefully going to be able to provide some ideas, because it doesn't have to look this way. It doesn't have to look like the typical humble brag of like, oh, I'm so embarrassed. I fit into my daughter's jeans. I didn't realize I was wearing them to the store today. It could be like a legitimate, service-oriented way of looking at it, or it doesn't have to be jerk-ish. I don't know how else to say that.
That is so true. It doesn't have to be jerkish, my friend. Yeah. And so, and that is, in all honesty, you see folks like that, and you're like, man, I don't want to be like that guy over there. He's an idiot, and I can't stand that dude. So why would I want to emulate him, or at least, take his same approach? But the thing is that people notice it. People notice him. I don't care how much of a jerk he might be, but people know who the dude is or who the woman is. And it's like, yeah, you can't argue with that. Now, they might give it a bad name, but if you look at their, I guess at the fundamental level of what they're doing, there's a lot of benefit in that, for any one of us. And so with that being said, say if we are too uncomfortable to self-promote, okay, is there still an opportunity for us to move forward and get ahead in our career? If we don't self-promote, is it still possible for us to get ahead? And before we answer that, Kelly, our friend Sue Murray, she says, I am normally fairly articulate, but I feel like an idiot when I try to promote myself. I become tongue-tied. I feel you on that one, Sue, because I tend to stutter when I get nervous and I'm anxious. So I completely understand where you're coming from. So thank you for being candid and sharing that. So Kelly, I don't know if you want to respond to that or if you want to go ahead and answer the question as well, but go ahead and take it away.
No, I was just going to say, hi, Sue. I was just going to say that, I think that that's honestly, Sue, that's not uncommon at all. Okay. And, it kind of goes back to that whole idea of imposter complex or people not feeling very confident about themselves. We assume that other people feel really confident about doing this kind of self-promotion. The vast majority of people don't. Yeah. And, we're going to be talking about what I like to think of as, and what Ray and I have talked about is a much more organic way of thinking about it, so that it's not a situation where you feel like you have to stand up on a stage and be like, here is who I am, and here are all the marvelous things that I have done. Yeah. Because there are a lot of really meaningful ways to promote without having to feel like you're putting on a performance, which is when you kind of get flustered and you're like, oh my God, I'm having to give like a speech about myself. This is awful. It doesn't have to feel that way. And honestly, going back to Ray, your metaphor about the people on the side of the road trying to get help with their vehicle, the reason I think that we think that self-promotion has to be that sort of performative way of doing it is because that's what we've generally seen. And so we've only seen those two options. We've seen the person sitting in their car waiting for somebody to just magically know they need help. Yeah. And we've seen the other person that may be out there and like, taken to extremes, like the dude in like the little, tank top out there, like flexing and like trying to look tough, trying to like get some woman to pull over to try to help him. You know what I mean? So there are definitely ways that we can self-promote without it feeling super awkward. Sure. And I know, Ray, you've got a lot of different ways to think about this as well that I think are especially powerful because you are so introverted. One thing that I like to do and that I have done in my career to help me warm up to advocating for myself and promoting myself. And I like to think of those two things as the same thing. When we're advocating for ourselves, we're saying, this is what I need and this is what I can do. And it's not, like, you should make me CEO next month. But what I started doing to get myself comfortable with the concept was I would start promoting for and advocating for other people on my team. Yeah, absolutely. So I was the major extrovert. Actually, there were two of us who were like super extroverted on our team. The majority of the people on the team that we worked on were introverted people. And they also had that same, mindset of like, I shouldn't brag on myself. I shouldn't put myself out there. It's not appropriate to brag on myself. Mm-hmm. So I started kind of doing it for them. Okay. And, to your earlier example, Ray, when you were talking about writing that grant, mm-hmm. if that lady had said, actually, I didn't write that grant, it was Ray that did that grant. He jumped in at the last minute. He did an amazing job and we got fully funded for that. That is, obviously that's helpful to you. But it also is helpful for the person that is doing that because it makes you feel more comfortable with the idea of fact-based. It's fact-based. Yeah. It's not like, absolutely, I'm the most awesome person ever. It's saying I did these things or this other person did these things and this was the result. Yeah. It doesn't have to be like slimy salesman kind of. That is so true. And unfortunately, that's the mindset, or at least the thought
that many folks have. You have to be slimy about it, but it doesn't have to be that way at all. And so I love what you just shared. And, I have an actual real life example of that. So, the job that you and I met on, that particular job, when I first got there, like, let's just say within that first year to like year and a half, they were, their performance management process that they had in place. So with, dealing with the annual reviews and the quarterly reviews and things of that nature. So I've worked with other, or at least I worked at other companies that had at least the annual review, but, it was just like pushing the paperwork, hey, if you get a raise, you get a raise. If you don't, you don't, it's just like, they're just going through the motions. But the job where you and I met, when I first, got into that organization, the subsidiary that I worked at, they were really intentional to, I guess, with ensuring that the process wasn't just about the process, but it was really about the people. And that was the very first time in my career that I realized how valuable other people are to our success. And by that, what I mean, Kelly, you and I, obviously, we work in the training arena. And so we have a multitude of opportunities to engage and interact with a bunch of people. And so I guess the sweet side of that, the beauty of that, is that so many people get the opportunity to see you in action. And even without asking for it, people will always provide us with feedback. And so a lot of people used to send emails to me and say, hey, I attended this session that you taught, it was a fantastic job. These are the things that I got out of it, and so on and so forth. Okay. So the light bulb finally went off in my head, and I realized, you know what? To me, this is a currency. I can actually use this feedback that, anybody could just blow it off and say, oh yeah, thank you. This is great. Appreciate it. But it may not be, that meaningful to us if you're looking at it just in a transactional type of way. But anyway, I saw the bigger picture. I was blessed to see the bigger picture, and I realized, hey, I can use this as my currency to engage and also ensure that I reach the destination within my career, at least during that fiscal year, as far as where I want it to be. And so what I did, which is kind of dorky and geeky, but basically I made up like what I would call like a portfolio or just, a document where I just copied and pasted their feedback into this ongoing document. So I had their name, I had the feedback, and, and things of that nature. And so to show you how far I took it, I started to align it to the various competencies that were, implemented within our organization. So for each competency, I had about 3 to 5 examples of as far as feedback from other folks. And so when I went in to have my end of the year discussion, I'm telling you, I felt so empowered because it wasn't my words at all. I not only did I have like my self-evaluation that I submitted, but I also had like this supplemental packet. It was a true packet. It was like about 12 pages or so. And it was like, hey, by the way, here's the feedback that I received from other people, from my peers, from my, internal customers in regards to this project that I was working on, or, in regards to this initiative or what have you. So the thing is that other people were bragging for me. At least that's the way I positioned it. Okay. So it wasn't icky at all. Yeah, it was self-promotion, but it was not uncomfortable because I didn't make it up. I didn't have to say, oh, I'm this, I'm that. Other people were doing that for me. And I'm telling you, that's when the pivot happened within my career where I stopped being like, oh, you know what? I can't move up. I can't move around. I don't have any opportunities to, wow, Ray, I didn't know this was all happening. Thank you so much for sharing this. And, it was from senior leaders down to, entry level folks. It was the whole gamut. And that's when the light bulb went off in my head. And so when I taught, some of the classes that dealt with that performance management process, I would always tell people, you need to, if you're not getting feedback, you need to start asking for feedback.
Yep.
Okay. And then not only that, you need to start collecting that and put it together so that way you can pull it out when it needs to be pulled out, and you can share it with the people that need to know what's happening in your space. And so that way, when it comes down to determining, you know, the opportunities that they might give to folks, or when it comes down to your end of the year discussion on whether or not you're going to get a raise or anything like that, guess what? That could be that convincing evidence that puts them over, and they say, you know what? I am going to give this opportunity to Kelly or to Sue or to Valerie or Misty or Ray, so that way they can continue to progress, you know, and move forward. And it's planting that seed in their head, because guess what? Once they start seeing that, then they start becoming your cheerleader and advocate, because now they understand, wow, our department is doing way more than what I had even envisioned or knew about. So, I mean, it's a win-win-win all the way across the board. So I definitely wanted to put that out there for folks. So if you're taking notes, you want any tips, collect feedback, share that feedback to the people that need to know what's happening in your space.
Yes, 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 yes. And I have done this too. I call it my kudos folder. I have in my kudos folder, whenever anybody has given me good feedback, or they've sent an email saying, thank you so much for this, or whatever, I put it in the kudos folder. Whenever I've had a project that went really well that I worked on, and we got the results of the project that said, okay, you know, we got through this project with this level of success, or we, you know, managed through this issue successfully, I put that in my kudos folder as well. And yes, share it up, because this is also stuff, just side note, this is also stuff that you put on your resume. Yeah. And you use during job interviews. Absolutely. So whenever you're, you know, we tend to not think about this as being like an ongoing progression, a constant process of getting this information, holding on to it, or sharing it up somehow. But we're really, in a way, we're sort of applying for our own job all the time with everything that we do. And you think about when you're applying for a job, you know, you're having to put it out there. You're saying, I did all of these things, and this is my work history, and this is what I've accomplished, this is everything I've done. But when we get into a job, a lot of times we don't think about our work the same way until we're getting ready to apply for a different job or a promotion. And then all of that stuff has to get pulled back out, and we say, okay, what did I actually accomplish? I got to figure this out. But by updating your leadership team and getting into that habit of doing this in these little tiny ways regularly, first of all, it's going to help them to know what you can do. Second of all, it's going to help you to feel less awkward about it. And third of all, it's in writing, so it's especially less weird. And I've done the same thing. I've actually, when I've gotten emails from people on a training program or something that we rolled out, a big initiative that we rolled out, I send that email, I would send it on to my boss and be like, oh, look, we got great feedback on the program that our department runs. Wow. But in the message, it was like, Kelly did an amazing job, blah, blah, blah. I really got a lot out of the program. Sure. So it's kind of that double whammy of like, I did a great job, but our department is also doing really important work. And so again, that also will help to continue to fund the stuff that our department needed to do. You know, if people don't know that it's impactful, you may not get the ability to do it anymore. So building that concept into how you report up to your leaders, what you do on a regular basis, is also going to help this to feel less like a big event. Yeah. You know, less like I have to, you know, do this big thing and like tell everybody what I do. It's like I do this every week when I send an email to my boss saying this is what I've worked on this week. If you aren't doing that, then maybe this is a good time to start doing that. Absolutely.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing that. And I love the part where you said, just because we have a job doesn't mean that it just stops right there. you're like, you said, it's almost like you're reapplying every day or every time there's an initiative or a project for you to work on. Because it's like, you gotta prove your worth, basically, you know, prove your value. And that's critical, especially, and I learned this last year, you know, especially if organizations are looking to who can they lay off or, you know, or what have you. It's just like, you have to constantly stay in the forefront of people's minds, and especially those key decision makers. Okay. And I saw my good friend 𝗪𝗛𝗴. She said she liked the idea of collecting that feedback and sharing it with our leaders, or at least those key decision makers. So thank you, 𝗪𝗛𝗴, for joining us, and thank you for commenting. That's awesome. So Kelly, I know we're getting closer down to the end of our show. We got about 10 more minutes or so, give or take. And so I want to kind of make this last point, at least, you know, lessons that I've learned in my career. And also, if you hear some background noise, please forgive me. I decided to go in another space inside the house. And so my next door neighbor, and I told you, Kelly, this was going to happen. My next door neighbor decides to cut grass, at 7:50 at nighttime. So it's hot.
It's hot.
And he's right outside my window right now. So
my dogs are running around, staring at me on the windows outside. They're like,
"Oh, this is so funny."
So people may hear my dogs too. It's
no
fine.
worries.
It's fine.
So
we're all human beings.
Absolutely. Yep, absolutely. So the second point is, I've done this as well, and this is so funny how this all plays out. So, you know, not only are we receiving feedback from our peers or maybe from our internal customers or other folks within the organization, but, you know, we also receive feedback from our direct leader, okay? And I've received feedback at times from my direct leader via email, and guess what? Just like everybody else, I would copy and paste their feedback and I would put it into that running document. So like in my head, I'm like, there's no way in the world you're gonna discredit or discount your own feedback that you provided to me. So I usually put those front and center, okay? Oh, by the way, on this date, you know, 4 months ago, you said this, and it was
you said I was awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. I guarantee you, I've done that. And so what's so crazy, Kelly? I still have all of those documents in my room.
That's awesome.
And so yes, use and leverage that feedback. But this last point that I really want to make is that, so we talked about how to use that feedback and kind of using it to self-promote. The second piece, and this is where I really started seeing progress in my career as far as moving up to that next level. It's really when your leader approaches you for the opportunity. So like in my career, and I've shared this, I have it on my profile on LinkedIn, how I was initially at some other organizations where I was rejected on 2 different occasions at 2 different companies for promotion within my own department. And it was like deja vu all over again. It's like it happened to me the first time, and then it happened to me again almost in the same way. And I was just like, it has to be me. You know, you start thinking crazy thoughts like it has to be me, because yeah, I've heard of people not getting promotion, but how many people get rejected twice, you know, at 2 different organizations within their own department? It wasn't like I was trying to apply for a position outside of you know, of our department. Okay, so that's what I had in my head. That was my track record at that time, and so I'd pretty much given up. I said, you know what? If I'm meant to be at an entry level within my career or within the organization, then so be it. Hey, at least I'm able to still afford, you know, living. You know, I can still pay for myself and take care of myself. And so I pretty much stopped actively seeking further opportunities within companies that I've worked for. And in all honesty, once I stopped that, that's when the opportunity started to come. Now that might sound crazy, and even me saying this, it sounds like, okay, Ray, what are you saying? So you said when you applied for promotion opportunities, you didn't get it, but you're saying that when you didn't apply for these opportunities that actually came, that's exactly what I'm saying. And so here's the thing. Once I stopped focusing in on, you know, getting promoted, I redirected my focus and I started looking at creating value. I honestly, I kind of given up and said, you know what, it is what it is. If I'm going to be at this level for the rest of my life, guess what? I'm going to be the best person to ever do this job. That was really my mentality. And that's when I started getting a hold of this whole concept of creating value. And so, with that, I wanted the people that I was serving, I wanted them to benefit. I wanted them to win. I wanted them to experience success. And I put my whole heart in it. And I didn't really realize that my leaders were aware of this. I didn't realize that because, like I said, I had checked out. I had given up on moving up. So I was just saying, I'm just going to be really great at what I do. Mm-hmm. And lo and behold, my leaders were very well aware of this. And not once, but twice, positions that were higher than the position that I was working in were actually created. So these were positions that absolutely did not exist. And they were specifically created with me in mind. And I was like, I can't believe this is happening. So I stopped trying to be ambitious and grow my career. And once I stopped, my career actually grew. It doesn't make sense, like I said, as I'm saying this, but that's what happened. And the key thing here, the whole point is that, and Kelly, I know you touched on this earlier, when we start putting other people first, as far as helping them and helping them succeed, people do not forget that. Okay, I don't care how much of a jerk you might think some people are, people don't forget that. They might be a jerk to everybody else, but guess what? When it comes to you, you're going to be like that angel, that rock star in their head, because you helped them out when they needed help. And you've done it consistently. And you didn't ask for anything in return. People notice that, people acknowledge that, and people remember that. And so the whole point is, yes, I know we want to grow our career. There's nothing wrong with that whatsoever. I love growth. I still crave growth. But now I've kind of backed up and I figured out, you don't have to be a jerk. You don't have to self-promote in a way that's going to just, you're wearing the t-shirt saying, I am great. No, the way that you prove that is, guess what? You have to humble yourself and serve. Humble yourself and serve. And yes, once you're able to do that, that's when those opportunities start to come your way. I guarantee you, I was not looking for those opportunities when they landed in my lap. And it wasn't until my mindset shifted and I realized this is how you do it. And so I, in turn, I was able to do that for one of my direct reports, at my last job. And it was just like, that was such a thrilling feeling of being able to help her succeed, because she was there for a long time, giving up, checking out, looking for other opportunities outside of the organization. I'm like, look, I don't know how it happened. I know it happened to me. This is what I learned, as far as how to go about doing it. And we did it together. I did it for her, help her navigate through that, pushed, influenced up, pushed when I needed to push, alert people when I needed to alert them and saying, hey, I have this person on my team. They've been here forever. They're my rock star on my team. I want them to be promoted. We need to upgrade her position, and it happened. And so the point is that, yeah, we can we can talk about branding and all this fancy stuff all day long. You can have the most beautiful resume and LinkedIn profile. You can dress really nicely. You can dress better than everybody else. But what gets people's attention is how you make them feel at the end of the day, and then as they think about the opportunities that exist, you want to be top of mind. And the way that you claim that spot is that you have to serve and you have to be able to help them succeed, because people don't forget, and the key thing is, being humble enough to do that. It's so easy to fall into that trap of, man, I deserve this, or so-and-so doesn't deserve that position. That's my position. So, and then you start, that's not the mindset we need to have. And I've been there, and I know that that's not the mindset we need, because it just eats at you.
It eats you up. Yeah.
And it shows in your actions. You know what I'm saying? But I don't want to get on my soapbox any longer. I need to get off of it. But I just wanted to put that out there. So when we talk about using humility to self-promote, what I just shared with you is what we're really talking about.
Yeah.
You know,
yep.
Kelly, I'm gonna let you close it out, my friend. And I know my son is probably ready for this episode to end so that way he can shut it down for us, but we're not ready just yet, son. So I'm gonna let my friend Kelly close us out, and then we'll wrap it up at that point in time.
Well, I feel kind of weird finishing off after you just gave that amazing little wrap. No. It was awesome. It was fantastic. So I will just encourage everyone this, well, it's almost Friday. So let's say over the next week, we will want to encourage all of you to do two things. Okay. One is to find a method, whether it's written or email or just your regular one-on-one meeting with your leader, to find a way to talk factually about what you have accomplished recently. And this is especially important if you're working remotely. That's a whole other level of invisibility that's possible there.
Absolutely.
The number two thing that I would ask you to do is to find a way to advocate for someone else this week. It can literally be going, if you go into a restaurant and talking to the manager and telling the manager that your server did a great job. Wow. But passing that energy forward, it's going to come back to you. So find a way to spread the ripples of promotion around the world in your own little way. So with that, I guess, Ray, we're going to call it a night.
That is awesome. And thank you so much, Kelly, for sharing your closing thoughts. So thank you to everyone that joined us this evening. Thank you for your comments. We really appreciate you. And if you're still tuned in, we'd like for you to go ahead and share this rebroadcast, because by the time we end, it's going to be in the past. So go ahead and share that within your network so other folks could potentially benefit from tonight's live stream. And we'll be back at it again next month, in the month of July, with our next topic. And we're trying to expand this program a little bit more. So we're going to be playing with some ideas and acting on some things in the future. So stay tuned for more. And once again, thank you so much.
And if you have suggestions or ideas,
yes,
let us know.
Yep, message us directly and let us know your ideas, or really let us know what you want to hear. Mm-hmm. And if you are interested, maybe you can join us on one of our shows. We would love to be able to meet you in person, or at least virtually. And that would be fantastic. But definitely, if you have any ideas, please share that with us. You can message us, either Kelly or myself, directly. So yes, thank you all so much. Serve. Say again?
I said we're here to serve.
Absolutely. Sounds good. Thank you all so much. And thank you to my son. And son, you can go ahead and shut us down for the evening. Y'all take care.